Good morning, Bucknutters. It's Thursday, November 13th, 2014. This is the Bucknuts Morning Five-ish. I am Dan Rubin. And if it's Thursdays, that means Thursdays with Steve Wiltfong. Steve, the Director of Recruiting for 24/7 Sports, joins us today. Steve, how are you on this absolutely frigid Midwest morning?
Good morning, Daniel. What's going on?
What's going on is every winter I realize I want to leave the Midwest, but that's a subject for my other podcast.
I'm telling you, if the roads weren't bad, I wouldn't give a damn about the winter. It's the driving in it that sometimes sucks.
People say moving to San Diego is no fun because there's no change in the seasons, and I don't understand that. But another subject entirely, talking about recruiting with Steve, as we always do. Very interesting recruit in that we really haven't heard anything super definitive on him. That's Neville Gallimore, the giant nose tackle from St. Catharines, Ontario. You had a chance to speak to the people in his camp earlier this week, and it sounds like he's setting up visits. He's always been seen by many to be a serious consideration for the Buckeyes, but it seems like we never really have anything tangible. What's the latest on Gallimore, and what's your vibe?
Well, I think Ohio State could very well sign Neville Gallimore when it's all said and done. I think they're definitely a top school. And he's an impressionable kid. He's gone on these official visits and left very impressed. Went to Oklahoma first. Went down to Florida State. I think he had a great time at Florida State. I think the Noles are in it. Went to Michigan State on an unofficial. I was told by the coaches at his school, or the head coach at his school, that he didn't believe the Spartans were really in play. Ohio State, I think, is really in play. He got a chance to visit Ohio State once already, so this is going to be a return trip for him when he takes his official visit the weekend of the Michigan game. I think right now you have a top two of Ohio State and Florida State, and so we'll see what happens going into that visit. Right now, my crystal ball forecast is on the Noles. Neville Gallimore's parents are Jamaican immigrants to Canada, and I know Florida State has a strong Jamaica presence in their locker room, and that was something that made Gallimore very comfortable on top of, the bells and whistles at Florida State that he enjoyed being down there. I mean, those are things that he'll similarly like at Ohio State. So we'll see what kind of connections Gallimore continues to make with the people at Ohio State, but I certainly think Ohio State's a major player and think as well that he could end up being a Buckeye.
Certainly promising, even a little more promising than I expected. Last week we talked about Larry Scott, in my opinion, the top running back in Ohio in some years. The star out of Hubbard High in Northeast Ohio, still active in the playoffs. Give us the latest on what you're hearing on Larry Scott.
Well, we talked about it last week on the Bucknuts Morning Five, and I think I said something like, along the lines of, well, he's coming back to Ohio State. He's been there a bunch of different times. What else does he need to come back for? That's got to be amazing news for Ohio State, and it's certainly good news that he's coming back. I'm not downplaying that, but talking with people on the Ohio State side of things, I said something along the lines of, that's got to be good news for a potential flip, and was told not necessarily. So this young man's a tough one to figure out, no question. Wherever he goes, I think he's got a chance to be the best running back from this class on the next level. I think he's a mega talent.
You're talking nationally, right, Steve?
Yeah. So if Larry Scott went to Michigan State, Ohio State, or some school we're not talking about, I think that he's got a chance to be the most productive back in this class on the next level with what he brings. Not just as a running back, but he's just a fantastic athlete, gets it done on both sides of the ball for Hubbard. He can catch it. He can do a lot of things. So he's a true football player, a great get for Michigan State. But long story short, as I know I've rambled on a little bit, I was told that it's not a foregone conclusion that if he comes back to Ohio State, he's going to flip. And I'm not sure anyone thought that anyway. But from my perspective, I'm thinking, how many visits does a young man take before – if you follow the business, you got to feel good. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see what happens.
Usually it means there's some extenuating circumstances, and I think there are in the Scott case. I guess one of the reasons I keep talking about him is kind of wishful thinking, just because I just think he's such a special back, such an every down workhorse back. So we'll see how that works out. I'm not optimistic that Larry ends up in his home state. Okay, finally, Branden Bowen, the offensive lineman from Utah, had been off the radar for most of the recruitment, had committed to Utah, has now told the Utes no thanks. Do you think that's setting up for him to join the Buckeyes?
Well, Bill Kierlick, Bucknut's own, has been all over this story since his visit to Ohio State, and I know Alex Gleitman has chimed in with some good information. For me, I've been lying in the weeds a little bit as those two have been crushing it on him, but I checked in with some sources after the visit and after his official to Ohio State and was told it was 50-50 at that time, was the pulse coming out of sources around Ohio State. But, with him decommitting from Utah, I'd put in a crystal ball for Ohio State at that point, because if he's going to reopen the process, then how often do you go back and commit to the school you reopen from? So feeling really good about Ohio State right now, a position of need and a really good player.
Okay, I cheered. Just to finish off, one more quick thing. You've always been high on Ohio State's recruiting because you do this and see it from a national perspective, but what effect, if any, do you think Ohio State's performance on the national stage Saturday night had on their recruiting?
Well, if there was anyone doubting the direction of the program, which I don't know how you could with all the young guys that they're playing at key positions and what they're bringing back next year, and there's no question that the Ohio State coaching staff is telling the prospects that when they're communicating with these young men. But if there was any inkling of doubt that Ohio State was not of the level of the national stage, they certainly zipped that right up on Saturday evening, because I still think Michigan State's a damn good football team. I know they lost at Oregon, and I know the final score does not indicate how close that game was at Oregon, because Michigan State was kind of taking it to Oregon in their place. They were winning in the third quarter, and they overcame some defensive breakdowns that allowed Oregon to get a cheap score or two. And again, don't get me wrong, I think Marcus Mariota is arguably the best player in the country. I thought he was the difference in that Oregon-Michigan State game. Another quarterback would have been on his back with how close Michigan State was getting to Mariota, and he made some plays, and Oregon came back and won the game at home. But I'm not mad at Michigan State for losing at Oregon and losing to Ohio State. I think they're a damn good football team. I thought it was a great win for the Buckeyes is where I was going with this. And so I'm excited to see what Ohio State can do moving forward. People are already talking about this Minnesota game being a trap game. I don't see how. Minnesota's ranked in the top 25 too. I know Minnesota slipped up against Illinois, and that's disappointing because they could be 8-1 going into this game themselves. And I think Minnesota has one of the best coaches in the country in Jerry Kill. So they're going to have a really good game plan for J.T. Barrett, who has quite a bit of film on him now. So Jerry Kill is going to have a chance to put something in place to try and slow down J.T. Barrett. But in my opinion, J.T. Barrett playing fantastic football right now. Loads of weapons around him. It's just exciting how many playmakers he has around him on top of being a playmaker himself. I think Ohio State's got a chance to win out and hopefully get in the playoff here and then do some damage from there.
There's only one way to start your Thursdays, Bucknutters, and that is with Wiltfong. Steve, we appreciate you joining us. Have a great Thursday, Friday, and a great weekend.
See you, Pete. We'll see you guys. Thanks.